Hey friends, welcome back. This is Dawn. Today I have a press and seal hack that is perfect for whenever you want to cut multiples of nested dies. Now, we all know that lining up those nested dies to cut more than one, if you want to stack them for a little thickness, is next to impossible. You can tape them together with washi tape, but inevitably that washi tape will always cut through at some point, and you want multiples of the exact same nested area. This is going to work great for all of those concentric shapes. I've shown you the spellbinders, everlasting circles, and the squares, the honeybee sweet stacker ovals. These are all going to work perfectly with this trick. Here's the fluted ovals from spellbinders. Now what this die does is the inside die will cut a decorative decorative edge around that oval, and then you cut out the outer oval. Now, if I wanted to cut more of these, if I wanted to stack these, what I do is I tape them together with washi tape and hope that die, that thinner outer die, does not cut through the washi tape too. It almost always does. So if I wanted to cut 2 or more of these with the exact same silhouette, stacked exactly the same, nested exactly the same, it is next to impossible. And I like to do this if I want to create like a shaker card, or if I want to do these layering frames. Like say I wanted to take 2 of these dies here and nest them inside of each other and cut multiple frames to stack. Again, almost impossible. So any of these dies like this, any of your layering dies, any of your concentric shapes, any 2 dies that aren't even meant to go together, which I'll show you in a sample here, this hack is going to be perfect for this, because inevitably it's always going to, when you're nesting 2 shapes manually, if they are not held together securely, you're almost never going to get them lined up exactly the same for multiple cuts. So this is where the press and seal comes in. Okay, so for the first sample, I'm going to show you how to do a rainbow. Okay, this is no secret, but we can use our concentric circles to do rainbows. The key here is that every band has to be cut exactly the same in order to nest up against each other. And we can use this for concentric squares, ovals, diamonds, hexagons, circles, doesn't matter. We can make a rainbow of colors that nest perfectly into each other. All right, so I've taken a piece of press and seal and I've laid it down sticky side up on my craft surface here. I'm going to make sure that it's big enough to fit the largest die that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to arrange the dies on top of the press and seal. And I'm going to push the dies into the press and seal. As the name implies, when you press it down, it grabs whatever you're pushing it to. It's more sticky. So here you can see it's holding on to that die nice and secure. And now I'm just going to simply start layering my dies inside. And each time I'm going to push down on the die to make sure that the press and seal grabs it. Now, you'll notice that I'm pressing the die. I'm not sliding my finger around this die. It is still a metal edge, and it's not sharp to the touch, but if you slide your finger around there, I'm pretty sure you could probably cut yourself. So don't slide your finger, push, do a little pressure. That's it. I can cut myself on tinfoil, so I know I could, if I were to slide my finger like that, I'm pretty sure I'd cut myself. So just push it into place. And then once you have all of your desired dies on your press and seal, you are ready to go. Now, I do like to flip it over and then just rub around the back side. So here I'll flip it over and then just rub around the back side here to make sure that everything is intact and adhered. And then we'll have one more step. So the open area there, if it is large enough, when you run it through your die cut machine, it will adhere to that center die cut. And it will leave some residue because you're putting pressure on that press and seal. So if you want to use that center area, here's the trick to keep that center die cut clean and free of any sticky residue. We're going to take a piece of printer paper. I'm going to cut it down to size, and that's what I'm going to run through and cut first. That inner circle is going to stick to the press and seal inside, and it's going to make sure that our center area there releases cleanly. Now, I would also do this step, excuse me, if I were layering 2 large frame dies. So if I had a large frame die and then a smaller oval inside, I would definitely do this step, and your printer paper is going to stick to all of the exposed press and seal and keep that press and seal from pressing into your good cardstock and leaving a sticky residue. Or worse yet, ripping your cardstock. So anywhere you have enough press and seal exposed to grab the printer paper, it's going to hold on to that, and that is going to be your shim between your good cardstock and the press and seal. Now there is one more step that I recommend, and that is to just burnish in that area. And then we're going to cut any excess press and seal around the edges. Because again, remember that press and seal is going to be going through our machine. That machine is going to put a lot of pressure on that press and seal, which is going to adhere it to any exposed cardstock. And that can leave behind that sticky residue, or worse yet, tear the paper. So conserve your cardstock, trim down the press and seal, and then you don't have any waste. And if you're like me, you're going to trim down your cardstock anyway because my top plate is not brand new. It does have marks in it, you can see there, and those marks do transfer to your extra cardstock. But in this case, I still have some room around the edges, and I do use that to cut smaller dies from. In this case, the little hearts that I have around my rainbow, those were all cut from the waste left from cutting out all of my concentric circles. All right, so here we can see we've ran the first one through, and all of our perfect circles just fall right out. And then you'll see here, I'm going to remove the extra from our press and seal. Now, remove the cardstock from the press and seal, not the other way around, because you want the press and seal to stay stuck to the dies. You don't want to remove it yet, because we're going to cut lots of circles here. But you can see that press and seal is staying intact. It's holding all of our circles together perfectly. And now we can just cut as many colors as our heart desires from all of our cardstock. Now this did hold together for a very long time. I did not have it fall apart or it does start to degrade over time, because honestly, we're putting pressure through those small bands of steel there. So it does eventually wear into the press and seal, but I think I can tell you, I think I did 13 in a row right here, and the press and seal did not come apart in any spots. So you can get several passes through before your press and seal would degrade. And then you would just have to do it again, which what I would do is I would peel back half of it, put my new piece of press and seal on, peel back the other half, and then finish laying my press and seal down so that I could get the exact same placement if the press and seal failed. Okay, once everything was cut out and I was looking at these, they kind of looked like vinyl records to me. Am I wrong? Don't they look like vinyl records? So how cute would this be? You could make a whole bunch out of the gray and then use the colored centers from inside some of the other ones to pop in there for your label. And a whole host of these, wouldn't they be cute? They'd be cute little banners, wouldn't they? Anyway, or shaped cards. I just thought I'd include that in there because I thought it was super cute. Okay, so back to our rainbows. Here I've got another piece of press and seal. Now this is an older piece, so it's got a little bit less stick on it. I reused the press and seal multiple times. And now we're going to use it to assemble our little rainbows here. So I've got it again, sticky side up, and I'm going to take each ring from each of my circles here, and we're going to lay them down. I'm going to lay them good side down. So good side of the cardstock to the sticky side of the press and seal, and I'm just going to press that into place. So just like I did the dies for cutting, I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to be placing each of the rings inside the press and seal. Not inside, onto. I'm going to place it onto the press and seal inside each previous ring. There you go. That makes more sense. Okay, so I just continued adhering all of my circles down until I had as many as I wanted. Here I cut more than I needed, so I had to decide on which blue to use, and I went with the aqua here. Now, you'll notice I use my bone folder to burnish these into place, and that's just so that it will hold it until I'm ready for it. It'll hold it all together, and I'll use this piece to actually adhere the rainbow when I'm done. And I'm going to cut this in half so we can make 2 cards out of it. Okay, so like I mentioned, I cut it in half, and now we're ready to work on the rest of our card. That will stay together and be ready for me when I'm ready to use it. So you can see I showed you, this is the Happy 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 A2 cover plate from Honeybee. And this cuts an A2 cover size panel with 4 happies cut out of it, but I only want the one. So I've already cut one out of brushed, the brushed gold cardstock from Spellbinders. And I'm going to cut 3 more so that I can stack them up, and we're going to turn that into that little happy shaker portion. This is just a great way to stretch some of your cover dies, especially if you have any other cover dies that have multiple words on them. You don't have to use the whole thing. So here I'm just going to, like I said, cut this multiple times from white cardstock. I will trim them all the same size using the top as my guide. So I'll line everything up at the top and then trim off any excess on the bottom. Because this cuts are left, right, and top, I will be positive that all of them are exactly cut in the same spot. And like I mentioned, I'm turning this into a little shaker box. So I've got a piece of acetate here that I've cut down to the same size. And I'm going to adhere that to the front of the shaker box here using a little liquid adhesive. Now, if you've been around the channel long, you know I'm not a huge fan of making shaker boxes. I love shakers. I just don't care to construct them very often. So this is a special treat for me, or you, or special torture for me. I don't know, however you want to look at it. All right, so while that is setting, I'm going to adhere all of my little die cuts here, one on top of the other, and this is what's going to give me room for the shaker bits. I don't need this to be super deep because I'm going to use some little micro beads. I'm going to use some little micro beads and some little flat sequins and stars, so I don't need it to be super deep. All right, those are all put together. I've put them to the side to dry, and now it's time to adhere our rainbow. I'm using the hinge method, using again the press and seal here. I have adhered the press and seal to my work surface, just pressed it on the edge there. That way I can flip the whole thing back. I'm adding some glue across the back of my rainbow here, and then I will just flip the whole thing right back over. I've already got it lined up where I want it on the cardstock, and then just press it into place. And then I can peel back the press and seal, and it'll leave the rainbow behind. Very easy. All right, so to fill the shaker, I'm going to use a mix of these little gold micro beads and these iridescent stars. I'm just going to shake these into each of the letters. Now, these are from Martha Stewart. I picked these up, at least 10 years ago. It's been a minute. But you could use anything similar. There are so many good embellishments and sprinkles on the market. I particularly like this type of shaker because each of the letters are separate, so they're all going to shake independently. Another really cute thing would be to add a different color in each of the letters. That could work as well, and it would be a great effect. All right, so I have some over spillage of beads and stuff here on the desk. I thought I'd show you how I pick them up. I just take a piece of painter's tape and wrap it around my hand the same way you would do lint. And I can just use that, roll it across the desk, and pick up all of those little leftover micro beads and sequins. All right, I've left my shaker box under a block there to let it dry, and now it is all good to go. And we've got our main part of our sentiment here. I love how sweet that is. And it, because it's those micro beads, it actually has this, remember those rain sticks? It almost sounds like one of those rain sticks. It is, it's a lot of fun. You can't help but shake it. Okay, so this is eventually going to live right here, but first I want to do some more building to the background there. And for that, I'm going to use the Cottage Countryside dies here from Honeybee Stamps. I really like the clouds in this die set. They're different from any of the other cloud dies that I own. I will have everything linked in the description box below, so make sure you check that if there's anything that you're wondering what it is or what I used. All of the cardstock that I used in today's cards is from Spellbinders and Concord and Ninth. So I'll have all of the colors that I used listed down there as well. Also, I know that a lot of you have said, those of you who are outside of the US said that you have a hard time finding press and seal. I did check, and Simon Says Stamp does carry it, and it is in stock. So I will have a link to that down below as well. And maybe when you're picking up an order at Simon Says Stamp, you can throw some of that in your cart as well. So hopefully that will help those of you that have a hard time sourcing it. All right, so now we are just down to assembling the card. I'll trim off that excess and then add my embellishments. I'm using my favorite adhesive from Honeybee Stamps. They're white foam strips. For most of anything that I popped up, I used the white foam strips, and now I'm just using some liquid adhesive to adhere my hearts. Now these little hearts are cut using the Lots of Love die from W+9. It's a little die included in the Lots of Love die. It's got 3 hearts on it. I keep this on my desk at all times. These are my favorite little hearts to add to projects. And then I adhered that whole panel using a little bit of fun foam and some liquid adhesive to a standard A2 card base. Finally, I will add my sentiment, and that is from the Be Still stamp and die from Honeybee Stamps. That will finish off this card. So I absolutely love how it turned out. I can't help but shake it. You cannot make a shaker card without shaking it. And I still have the other half of that rainbow, because remember, I cut this one in half. And I used it to create this card. So I cut that rainbow and adhered it in opposite corners, and then used the Big Buzzwords die along with the Mini Messages stamp and die to finish this one off. So I've got another set of cards to show you. This time we're going to nest a shape within a shape. And we're going to go through this one pretty quick because we have already gone through all the basics. So I've got the everlasting circles and squares here, and we're going to nest that circle inside the square. Pick the size that you like for the design that you're going to go for. I've chosen the 1-inch square and the circle that fits inside it. I'm going to lay my press and seal down, sticky side up, just like before, and then I'm going to nest my shapes inside each other, flip it over, and burnish it in place on the back side. Then I'll trim down any of the excess press and seal around the edges, and I'm ready to do my cutting. Now for my design, I'm going to have 6 of these silver fox squares, and inside I'm going to have circles that are bicolored nestled in. So I need to cut 6 of these squares. And for this one, I did skip the printer paper layer. It didn't give me any issues. After I cut the first one, if my paper would have been stuck to the press and seal and given me any issues, I would have just ran through and cut the printer paper really quick. But I think because these are smaller areas, it didn't have as much surface space for the press and seal to really adhere to. So I didn't have a problem doing it with these smaller images like this. All right, so once you have all of your pieces cut out, and make sure you do your planning beforehand, because you do not want to take these pieces apart until you are sure that you have all of your base pieces cut, right? Because the whole reason that we did this was because it's almost impossible to line those, to put those together in the exact same spot as you did prior, right? So if you need another one of those squares, it's going to be difficult to get it lined up exactly and get another duplicate cut. So make sure you've planned out your design. You've got all the squares that you'll need cut. Cut a couple extra if you think you might need them. Cut a couple extra even if you don't. You know my motto, cut more than you think you'll need. But I knew mine was going to take 6. So I cut those 6. And now I'm going to cut the colored circles that go inside. So I have chosen 12 colors here. I have 6 circles, 2 of each, a light and a dark of each of the colors. And I'm just cutting down little squares. I'm going to use the circle die from the middle and cut out a circle of each of the colors. Now, ultimately, all of our squares are going to end up like the sample square you see there on the left. But when you're doing these bold graphic designs, especially with geometric shapes, precision is the key. And you all know that I am not a precise person. I'm not even precise adjacent. I'm close-ish. I'm close enough. But with these geometric shapes, and the fact that we're going to be putting these circles back into that negative circle cut in half, they have to be cut exactly the same in order to line up identically. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the lighter color and the darker color, and I am using some repositionable adhesive to temporarily adhere them one on top of the other. That way I can cut them at exactly the same time, and I know that they will be cut in exactly the same spot. And then I will use the left half and the right half of the corresponding colors to put them back into their circles. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. So I've already adhered all of them one on top of the other now. And now I'm using the grid mat to mark the center line of all of my circles. And then I'm taking my guillotine trimmer and I'm cutting them in half. Now you'll notice that I will take the left side of one of them and then the right side of the other color. So here I took the right side of the light pink and the left side of the red. And that way I know that they are going to line up perfectly and make that perfect circle. And like I said, I repeated that with all of the colors. So cutting them in half, taking the right side of the lighter or darker color, and then taking the left side of the other color. And y'all, this hurt my brain. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm definitely more of the go with the flow, organic layout type of girl, but I got it figured out. I figured it out. And if you like the clean, simple, geometric graphic designs, these are some tips that I figured out, and maybe they will help you because, like I said, precision is key when it comes to these geometric layouts. Okay, so to assemble all of my squares, we're using that press and seal again. I've put all of my squares face down onto the press and seal, so it's holding them in place. And then I'm going to put each of my circle halves into the negative opening here, again, face down. So the bad side is facing up, the good side is facing to the press and seal. And the press and seal is going to hold everything in place until I'm ready to add the back. Okay, so all of these, we've got 3 pieces here right now. They are all separate. They're all being held together by the press and seal. How are we going to adhere this to our card base? Now, we could arrange this in our final arrangement and then glue it directly to the card base. But even easier is to take that outer square, cut 6 squares from it, and glue them to the back. So now all of those 3 individual pieces are going to act as one because we have put a back on them. And that's going to hold all of our pieces together. And you would do this same trick for any shapes that you had nested that were solid. So if I were to do the concentric circles, which I will show you a card here in just a second where I did do that, take your largest shape and cut a backer from it. All right, so now we've got all of our pieces and it's time to arrange them on our card front. Now, again, if I were a precise person, I would draw a grid here to make sure that they were all completely straight. We already established I am not a precise person, so I'm eyeballing it, guys, and it's close enough for me. Okay, so I've picked them up on my press and seal. I've added a little liquid adhesive, and then I'm going to adhere them down. Now, I did double check with the ruler, and it was good. So we're good to go. You'll see here, I have proof. I have proof that I pulled out the T-square. Yes, it was good. All right, so now with that adhered, it's just time to add our sentiment. And for that, I used the Honeybee Stamps Be Still Stamp and Die again. This time I heat embossed it in white on black. Now, I still had some leftover pieces from those circles, so I took the leftovers and I arranged those in the center and again used that same stamp and die set for the sentiment. And even though these hurt my brain, I do love the way they turned out. Okay, so I have one final sample set to show you here. Now this time I've taken the smaller set of concentric circles, so instead of starting from the outside, I started from the inside. I did 5 rings and I've put them together all in the same color palette. So gold, white, teal, pink, and then gold again. I'm using that brushed gold cardstock as my accent here, and I'm just assembling them all. I'm using the press and seal to hold them in place, and then once they're all together, I will cap them off on the back with the largest circle. And this will hold all of those individual rings together and make them one unit. So from here, there are a bazillion different things you could do. You could really get creative and create some amazing patterns if you cut these into quarters, which is what I did because I have apparently lost my mind. You know, working with halves was not hard enough for me. Now I'm going to work with quarters. So I am using my grid mat to help me mark these down the center, both horizontally and vertically. Now, we are not machines. We are humans. Is this going to be absolutely precise? No, it's not. It's going to be close enough, though. Remember, I'm the close enough girl. If you want precise, you can check out Laura Basson or Kathy Zilski. They are precise queens. I am close-ish. All right, so I'm going to use that guillotine trimmer again to cut all of these into fourths. So I'll cut it first in half and then cut it again into fourths. And do be very, very careful doing this with small pieces. The guillotine trimmer is sharp and your fingers are soft, but we all know that. So just use caution when you're cutting like this. All right, so with all of my pieces cut, I played around for no less than 2 hours trying to build different patterns. It's not that the patterns were hard to create, it's that I couldn't decide on what pattern I wanted to use. This is the bane of my existence. I am indecisive. So I left a little bit of these in here just to show you some of the different patterns that you could create now that you have these cut into quarters. And really, the sky's the limit here. You can create a gazillion different patterns. Now, what I ultimately decided on was something that didn't require all of my pieces to be cut identically. It is a little bit more forgiving. So again, because I am human and some of my lines are just a smidge off, when you're creating patterns like this, where you have seamless lines running through your pattern, if they're off a little bit, you are going to be able to tell. So if that bothers you, choose a pattern that is more forgiving. Something like this one. I chose this one because it already has a lot of breaks and some gaps in it, and it's really hard to follow any line straight through the pattern, so this one worked out best for me. And as usual, I'm going to use the hinge method with the press and seal to adhere this into place. And I chose to mount this on an A4 card size, so it's just a little bit bigger, and finished it off with a very simple sentiment. These are from the mini messages. And then I had so many rings left over that I decided to create another card to go with it. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you picked up some new uses for your press and seal. And if you have any questions about any of the supplies used, make sure you check the video description box below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.